everybody. Thank you for coming to Fishcake. This is the Studio Blend Artist Talk with In the Studio artists Mary Mitsuda, Stephen Rosenthal, and Amos Kotomori. And this is the book that this exhibition is based on. If you haven't bought a copy yet, it's only $28. Made by our friend Sachi, who's part of the OG crew of Fishcake that opened it up in 2007. And these are 22 artists who have been creating and playing for over 30 years and have all come through the halls of Fishcake. But it's great to see them all coming back and sharing their journey since then. Mary's a painter, and Steven's a musician slash sculpturist, and Kotomori's a designer, if you haven't known before. But yeah, I'm going to start off with Mary. The first question.
Okay.
What makes your art your own?
Oh, I think, when we were talking about it and in the book itself,
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, that's what the book is about. What is it that makes the work your own? But it's a bald question like that. It's pretty hard to face. But basically, I think over the years, my work has come to be more of an introspective kind of thing. I've gone through a lot of different phases, patterning and still life and all kinds of things. I think we're all interested in everything. I think lately, actually for quite a few years, it's been more about the sort of a state of introspection, or that feeling that you have, and it's a feeling of kind of recognition, like when you see something like on the beach, or something that really attracts you. A lot of times there's that physical response of kind of a stop and stillness, and it's a sense of like I something about it is something that you recognize kind of from your memory or previous experience. There's some kind of recognition, and I think that's sort of the core of what I'm interested in. And so, whether it's a landscape or whatever, I like to think of it as having a stillness. Maybe it's too still. Does it ever move? No, but I do like that kind of super quiet and balanced kind of feeling. And I suppose that's what I'm looking for and what I try to create or leave behind.
Yeah, beautiful. Steven?
What makes it?
Your own? How do you own your art? Or I mean, like, what makes your art you?
It never really occurred to me that it could be anything else. My evolution, I backed into visual arts from music, and musicians' relationships to their predecessors are different than visual artists, and the musicians collaborate with composers, and they work in community, whereas visual artists at least tend to perceive themselves as being alone. They don't show their work until it's all over. It's done before the public sees it or an audience sees it. So my approach has always been really influenced by that. And also I'm a wind player, so it all comes from your breath. If you don't breathe, there's no sound. And so I've always been really conscious of my breath in making things. So I kind of don't see how it could be anything. And then another aspect is that I was classically trained in music, but then when I entered adulthood, I went into the experimental, back then avant-garde world. And what I learned for me, that a big part of that is that you disarm oneself and the audience of their preconceptions of what art is, what music is. That's where it starts. So again, it's like it's only that it leaves it open to the moment, which makes it original, and you're there, so that's where it's coming from.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Musician to visual artist. Amos, would you like to answer next?
Well, for me, I think we all have our own story, and part of that story is just experiences. But I think as an artist, what happens is it's not a want to do art; it's a need to do art, and there is just something that makes it's joyful. When I started in textiles, I mean, for me, it wasn't about the technique; it was about the experience of it. So I was using brooms and mops to as paintbrushes, monumental pieces. I was ripping up garments and shredding them and restructuring them and just having fun. I mean, if you saw me on campus as a student, my arms would be like green to here and brown to there because I would be dyeing fabrics and I never wore gloves. So it was like one of those things where you have to just, they got in my way. So what I did was I was always colored and shorts and splattered with paint. But the story, we all have our story. And I think what's important is, for me as an artist, is to show that not for validation, but just to know that I'm making myself happy and hopefully others do the same.
Another question I had was, who's your biggest mentor
Ooh. Hmm. Hmm.
or influence? I guess there's another way to say it.
Well, in terms of art, and well, it's like it's especially as a visual artist. I think you're kind of uh, being mentored by everything that you see, and and actually that's how you kind of learn it, and without classes because I was terrible in school because I just I kind of learned just by looking at things and of course demonstrations, but I think um, a lot of times you learn from people that don't have anything to do with your field, or they're not your art teachers. Like in my case, I think Thurston Twig-Smith, who I worked for a long time, was I consider him a very big mentor. Not so much in making art, but just his viewpoint on different things, and I don't know. I just learned a lot from him. But Satoru Abe, who I met years ago when I was interviewing him, um, he was a big influence too, and continues to be, even though I don't really see him that much. Just because he's always been there, and he works and produces things, and he's always interested in other younger artists who are starting off, and he you know he literally mentors them, and he uh, buys their work. He advises them and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I there are so many mentors around, and I just whether they're in art or not, I just find them just so rewarding to be around. And I was just taking a workshop from Hiroki Morino, just to be around, and these guys, just their presence is very energizing. So I feel like we're always mentoring everybody all the time. I mean, other artists, and not necessarily other artists. That's
Short one answer. Steve,
on to you,
on to
Steve.
you.
I had a few really influential people. I'm also a piano technician, tuning and restoring pianos, and I did a formal apprenticeship with a really brilliant man named Leonard Wayne Jarrett. and I was young. Started when I was 22, and what I learned as from him and a few other people is a lot about the mentoring. It's not so much about teaching or technical things, but attitude, which Leonard had plenty of. But attitude and approach. And when you're learning, like you're saying, you just took this workshop and how they handle what their relationship is with the materials, or and how they approach it, and that's a really subtle thing. It's not something that can be measured. So that's and by knowing that, it's made it easier to find what people have to show me, because we're all coming from a different point of view. Always, we're all, I believe, facing the same thing and addressing the same thing, but our attitude and approach is always different.
So who's your mentor?
I think we're constantly mentored by the people around us, and I personally enjoy kids, young kids that are just kind of free and they just kind of scream and yell and express themselves so easily and openly. I think that's something that I try to do when I'm working, but then it's different now, because for me is I've gone into a commercial realm of fashion, and so you've heard of the 80-20%, which is before it was 80% passion and 20% was the need to survive and do all of that, and now it's in the commercial world for me. It's kind of switched off. It's kind of 80% reality and 20% creative. And right now I'm trying to be mentored by kids to get back to that passion, to get back to that freedom in doing that. And for me, every day, I feel like I'm being mentored by the elements. And I feel the wind, I feel when I'm in the ocean, all of these things create sensations that remind me how precious our journey is, the moment. And I don't do representational work. I do, like I'll do calligraphy, but it's spirit writing. So there is no right, there is no wrong, but it captures the feeling. And so mentoring to me is a constant that evolves if you're open to it. And that's part of it for me, is just being open to every form of mentorship.
When Amos was talking about being mentored by kids, I was thinking, I remember I was doing some leather work with this friend's kid who was like, 7 years old or something, and we had a big piece of leather, and he said, "Oh, can I make a wristband?" And I said, "Oh, sure, here's the scissors." And there I turned my back, and he had cut right through the middle of the thing to get a piece of leather this big. And I thought, wow, there's something that would never have occurred to me. It's like, wow, that is now going on to other things. That's so true that, I mean, you'd be surprised what kids will teach you about, like, how you're making, trying to be so precious with things and precious with everything, time, materials, whatever. And I think what we've all said is kind of that we do pick up our learning and our cues and great insights from just everything around us, which I was amazed. At least you had a mentor. The rest of us are just swimming around here.
I think it's important to be a mentor.
Yeah.
Which to just encourage people to be creative in their own way. It doesn't have to be in the arts, it could be in the science. I give accountants great credit because it's creativity of another kind, another side of the brain. I just can't fathom that. I mean, I don't even keep a bank balance. I mean, I just kind of roll with it. Whatever the bank tells me is what I have. But I think it's really important to give back and to mentor in any way.
I like how it's like you're kind of the kids are teaching us how to unlearn how to be an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're unlearning things that just got stuck with you over time. And you're like, why do I even care about these things? Yeah, to be a kid again, you know, it's inspiration.
Yeah. Doing things right, doing things, conserving.
So I'm curious, like, what keeps you going in terms of the passion? What, how did you develop a style? Because I feel like I don't have a style. I kind of, it's fluid, and it just depends. But there is a consistency. The consistency is my hands. That's basically it. But sometimes my thoughts are bigger than my hands are able to produce. So it's different. But what keeps you guys going?
You know, a long time ago, I read this quote. Ernest Hemingway said, there's certain things that I'm not very good at. I don't do very well, and that's what the critics call my style. And that's like, almost, I read that 50 years ago, and I never forgot that. And I think there's a lot of truth to it. It's the wobbles,
right.
And you know, I'm not good at this, so I'll do it this way, and then that kind of thing.
I call my thing kind of wabi sabi because it's perfect imperfection. It's like even with things that are graphic, if you really look at it, there's imperfection in it because it's hand done. It's not computerized. It's still hand done. And so, but it's yeah. I think most people dwell on the negatives, and that becomes the style because that's what they remember you for. They don't remember you for, wow, that's perfect line execution. Wow, that color balance. They just go like, why that? And that becomes a style that people remember you for. I think for me, it's like some of the shirts, like after it was on the floor, the buyer came up and said, "Is this a mistake in the printing?" And I said, "No, it's on purpose." It makes you stop and look at it.
That's true. It becomes more like, how did he pull that off?
So what about you, Mary?
Let's see, what were we talking about?
Like what keeps you going?
What's that?
What keeps you going? Your
Oh,
style,
what
your
keeps
passion,
me
whatever.
going? Well, I think it's the different interests. I think there's that thing of wanting to be kind of true to your interests, and like everybody, I think I'm interested in line drawings, calligraphy, ink, black and white, and I'm also interested in these vague kind of nebulous thing. What I'm interested in making are things that have the feeling that kind of has stopped me, and that's sort of like the thing, the thing that makes you want to take whatever you're going with. Like, say, if I'm doing like cartoony type things, it's like, well, how can I put this all together so that it does have not necessarily a riotous feeling, but a feeling of that kind of a viewpoint. And I don't know, it's a kind of the push and pull of designing it, I guess. Weeding out all the stuff you don't want. I think it's the process itself.
For me, I think it's about breaking rules. I mean, I remember we worked together years ago at the Contemporary Arts Center, and it's like it's such a prestigious place that everyone works years to get there. And my decision was, I'm going to show works that I did in the last 30 days. That's it. And so it wasn't an accumulation of my treasured best, what I felt was my best. It was whatever I did in 30 days, and that was it. And there was a freshness to it, to me, and a discovery. And I liked that. And at that point, it wasn't, I decided to use acrylic paints and synthetic fabrics, which I never did. And it was so much fun because it allowed for mistakes. And the mistakes look like, yeah, there's a reason for it. It's really spontaneous. So for me, breaking rules and like, I want to get into painting now. I'm not a painter. In fact, like when I first took my first painting class at the UH with Ken Bushnell, it was my first class, and I did this huge painting, and he says, "What's that?" And I said, "It's a clown sitting on a rocking chair." And he says, "I don't see it," and so I quit. But that was me. And now what do I want to do? I want to paint. Because it doesn't matter what somebody says if they see it or not, as long as I see it. I'm in a different place.
Yeah.
That's all part of it. I think we're all evolving. Don't you think your work has changed and your attitude?
Definitely the attitude.
Yeah. And what about visual?
Since we're talking about your work, can you explain your piece a little bit?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you're like, oh,
It's
it's
like,
here.
oh, it's
That's his
here.
work right there.
It's
Now
here.
to make it all
my
make
God.
sense.
Well, the first one here is, well, this whole collection is called origami because it's scarves that I didn't cut. It's all folded or manipulated, but not cut. So it's all folded and sewn. The first one is it's ocean waves. That that was just in capturing that. And the one second there, if they open it up, it's actually a jellyfish, and I digitized it and did waves that way. And if you look at the structure of the itself, it's just moved around fabric and pinned, and I think it looks great when it's on. All the pieces need a body in it because it's really architectural for a body, and the body gives it the shape. And so like I like certain parts of a female body in terms of for fit, which is always on this part here. I think that's really becoming, and it's like the perfect hanger. And from there, it needs to just tray doing that. The last piece is calligraphy, and it can be worn in different ways. It's a code. It's just layered. And so in that way, it's the pieces evolved by just playing with it and doing it. And I just use a mannequin, but so it's fun to see it worn, to see it in motion.
Definitely, so it needs to be worn.
Yeah.
And this one's super long.
It's because I like the drama of it. I like when you enter, there's a drag element to it. There's an element to it.
Train.
There's a train. Well, it's actually on four sides, and it's really great because in the front actually is short enough to walk, but it gives the drama of a drag coming in, which is
Layered.
yeah. And the necklaces are. That's the first show I did here was jewelry, and it was about elements and more about what each stone represented and how it captures. And it's like Oahu in Hawaiian. Stones gather energy, positive or negative, and doing it. And so I think our pieces represent that energy. We put ourselves in it and doing it. So it's a fun piece I did just for one collection and thinking of expanding it. But your pieces have changed through the years.
Yeah, they have. This kind of zigzag motif is something I've been doing for a little over 20 years. Well, it started actually before that with scraps, actually. Cut off, what was left over. And I've been working all this time to get a sense of fluidity.
Mhm. It reminds me of musical notes. It reminds me of a body anatomy because it just fits together really well, and yet there's tension to it.
Yeah,
There's edges to it that kind of it's dangerous, and yet it has an element that I can relate to. It's,
yeah. You know, it's funny. A lot of those people have that reaction of it being of the pointiness,
yeah.
but I don't. Actually, I like sharp things. But also, all of these are waveforms. It's like I said, I backed into visual arts from sound, and my primary series is about what as a after about 12 years in to having my head stuck in a piano going doing 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 the um, sound started to become more physical and more dimensional.
Did you have perfect pitch?
I don't, but at different phases I see it, I taste it, and the colors. There's colors, and but it's all sound is solid, but it's in the medium of air, so it's invisible, but it's just as solid as a brick. It's actually molecules bumping into each other, moving through space. So these pieces are like a frozen point in time and space of those molecules transferring energy. They're waves. That's what waves are. In water, ocean waves, it's water molecules,
Right.
and the energy is passing through. Interestingly, the way it works in acoustics or in the physical wave propagation is the molecules move about half the distance of their diameter, and that creates a vacuum, and then they move back to more or less their original position. And that's what creates the sine wave. The top part of it is the impulse, pressure wave, and then the bottom part of the sine wave is a vacuum. And that's happening all the way down on the micro level to the molecules. And it happens 10 billion times from my vocal cords to my lips, that exchange of energy. And that's like the mystery. I mean, that's what it tells me. And that's the exchange of energy, just frozen in an instant. And then like I say, I'm trying to get this fluidity, and the cutting into the bamboo are stylistic things that just I'm up over 100. I'm up to about 110 of these waveform experiments.
Do you want to show us how you put them together?
You're too smart.
I'm at like 47 years. My head's stuck in a piano, going doink, 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 and you've got plenty of time to think about what you're doing. And you're being washed in these waves. You know, there's all these like mysteries of frequencies, like pianos are not, they're tuned to the wrong pitch. They should be tuned here and that. And you're actually like a guinea pig. You're bathing yourself in every harmony.
So what happens when you go dung dung dung, and then all of a sudden you're in the studio and you're creating this? I mean, there's a transition that you visualize.
It's taken me years to internalize it. What I just described, those acoustics, it took me years to understand that and be able to say it that simply and have any idea what it was.
Simple.
Okay. It took me years. It took me years. Anyway, here's some another interesting thing about my process is that the first thing I do is the surface. Usually that's the last thing. If you look around at people's work, but because these are going together like that, like I can't burn it. This isn't burnt. This is black bamboo, but that one is burnt. After I've glued it and everything, I
Okay,
can't.
so but I noticed that inside you have it filled.
I put on a lot of them, if it's going to be under stress,
Right.
I'll fill it so because they're basically are glued together.
So, but what do you fill it with?
Wood.
Dowel? Just.
Well, in this case, usually I work with bigger bamboo, and I have to cut them from scratch. I have to fit them, and also they're not perfectly round. Bamboo's never perfectly round,
Right.
and
So
you can see. So
I have a question. So, like, how do you only fill it to here where the natural nub is?
in the
That-
yeah,
which
in
is-
this case, the main
okay.
thing, yeah, they're not.
So it's not.
It's not all the way through.
Okay, so it's here to here.
Yeah, because it's just to give
Got it.
a more glue surface, and sometimes I'll actually either put a spline or a dowel to put them together so that there's more a mechanical connection.
Okay. So you only do this where you can't see the opening, because I noticed that all the others are not filled.
There
You
might
see the
be
opening.
there might be wood back inside.
Oh,
There might be.
okay.
Again,
Sure.
like I do it because I have this one, the biggest piece I've ever did is 27 feet long, and it's out in the elements, and it has all these glue joints, and they didn't hold very well the first time. So I've learned that it's never going to happen to me again. But anyway, so I do the first, do the finish first, and then make these cuts. These pieces are made from one piece of bamboo, one pole of bamboo.
Oh, that's why it's consistent.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Okay, got
And
it. Okay.
and they're pretty much everything's there except for the sawdust. They don't whittle away. It's just a single cut. And the reason this is all sitting in a box is because I zigged when I should have zagged, and then I tried to fix it, and I made the same mistake
Right.
twice, and then I was.
But see, right now for fashion, everything needs to be sustainable. It has to be green. All of these things. You're working with bamboo, which is so sustainable, and it's like it's part of your story that I never hear, which is so important today in
The
marketing.
sustainability.
In marketing.
Mhm.
The sustain note.
Yeah. Well, it is, and you know, bamboo is so fast growing, and there's over 1,000 varieties, so there's so many. It's so versatile, and yeah, what was I mean? Everything clothes, and now they're touting
Bamboo
that,
fabrics,
bamboo sheets
Oh, yeah.
and rayon, of course.
But they pill.
Oh, really?
It pills. Bamboo fibers just tend to pill, and it doesn't really. It feels good, but it's sustainable, but it's not like cotton. It doesn't breathe as well.
Yeah.
But
Well,
you have
that's
to
okay.
come to
That's
Bali.
more for me.
Come to Bali. I live in a place that's called Tiangan, and it literally means bamboo.
It's called what?
It's Tiangan, which is bamboo.
Mm-hmm.
And I live in a little village of 200 people, and it was originally where they made bamboo gamelan.
Oh, really?
But come, oh, you would love it. And also, like, just the fact that there's black bamboo forests, and they're huge, and they're making furniture, and oh, please come, you'll love it.
Okay. Do you have time for one more question? We've been asking the artists all this time, but what do you think of the AI generated art and what it means for the future artists and for yourself?
Here's the smart one.
You have anything to say?
Do I? Well, it seems somewhat inescapable and kind of sort of attractive and repulsive at the same time. But I think it's going to find its way into everything. I mean, it already has, I'm sure. But it is kind of curious. I've seen some pieces uh, done that way. I mean, including by people, an artist who does mostly, like realistic oil paintings, and he has the uh, he has a sort of a sketch generated, and then he uses that as his working sketch, to actually, which is, I don't know, there's just, but what do I think about it? I think it's kind of interesting. It's almost like reading a book or something about, something that's totally created outside of you, and then somehow relating it. I don't know how I would use it, but it seems spooky but intriguing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I There's a lot in life that seems spooky but intriguing. Actually, I mean, it's sort of like, whoa, how do I feel? And like what is, or you're basically taking the sort of originality or creation of all these you know people from history and doing a mashup of it. And I don't know, maybe it's like 2,000 monkeys,
Yeah,
and eventually you'll
that
end
is
up with
basically, I think,
Shakespeare.
largely what it is.
I think I have a different because I've worked with a 7-year-old and I was painting with him, and doing all these things. And then she brought out her laptop and her crayon box was Photoshop.
Mm-hmm.
Her pencil, because how hard you press on the on the pen, the stylus, is it got broader, it got wider, it got. She knew how to manipulate all of those things. This
Get
is a
pictures.
7-year-old, and it's like it's their crayon box. It's just a different time, and I think if we don't change with it, it's not going to happen. For me, I take originals and then I give it to somebody technical and somebody mechanical and who works computers, and they do that and they transition it. I can't do that and I don't want to. I mean, I could spend hours on it, but no, it's like there's some designs that literally have taken an artist a month to clean and do this. I'm not going to do that. I'd rather just give them the messy work and make it, have to do this. Um, Time, I think, becomes important.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Oh yeah,
it's how do you price a piece of art? You can't because it's incredible amount of time invested in it. But and sometimes the simplest little it is worth the most because it's taken a lifetime to do it that quickly. So
and sometimes
but yeah,
can't even.
I think we've got to look to the future. It's they're learning to color outside the line. They're learning to think out of the box by using artificial intelligence. I think it's great. It's not for me, but I think it's wonderful to watch. And what they're creating is amazing.
But there's also the sense of, well, because I think, like, having just done this mokuhanga workshop, and the carving of the block and all this kind of stuff, and there was someone that did several blocks that were these really incredible, like kappa patterns, really fine lines that would not be able to carve these ever, really. And they did it. I don't. It wasn't CNC, but it was some, you know, technology kind of
Laser
process that cut the block with the pattern and perfectly. And she still printed it by hand, but even even for that, we're all carving away, and she was carving away too. But it's like, well, if I was to do this, how would I want to use it? Yeah, sure. Because even for like, uh, because I do a lot of ink uh, drawings and paintings and things. but it's really handy to have it in digital form and to do it originally digitally. And then it's useful. You can transfer it to other kinds of things or expand it for ideas. So I think a lot of us already use something like that.
I think it's really different though when you start with an original painting as compared to a computer generated painting. There is a definite feeling of tension, there's a feeling of spontaneity, there's a breath to it that is really important when you have an original. And I don't think anything's going to take the place of that. That's just me today. But it's it's where it's going. But there is a huge difference.
Stephen,
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, no,
Anyone
no.
want to ask
I wanted to hear
questions?
Stephen what he thought about the AI
Well,
One smart person to another.
well, I was just thinking from what you, two things that you said. One is that with this AI, it seems to like time. We live in time and space. This AI time. What does time mean from when something that's coming out through that system or that filter? But the other thing is that this has been a long time coming of reproduction, prior to photography, everything, the artist's ability to um, memorialize what stuff looked like was, completely analog, one at a time, or even prints maybe, but still. And then around the turn of the century, we started to have automated instruments and gramophones, and then radio, and slowly, and then film, motion pictures. And we all psychologically had to accept these things to be able even to be able to see them or hear them. Because actually, especially back then, what came out of a gramophone was really a long distance away from what actual violin sounds. And the spatial experience of it was, and the context is different. And it slowly, psychologically, we learn to accept these things. And this has been progressing for now, I used to say 100 years, now it's like 125 years or more. And now we're at this point, and I've encountered it over the last few decades as I kind of dip my toe into electronic music. And I do it, and it's really not, it's just technical. I mean, it's true with all of us that you get there's this part where you get to be creative, and then the rest is just technical, right? But with the digital stuff, the electronic music, it's mostly just the engineering, partially because the tools are set up for engineers. They're not really set up so much for artists. And every time I do it, I come out, I'm kind of happy with what I did, but it wasn't that much fun. And the output, it's like the difference between orange juice and Tang. and and now with this AI, it's the same thing. You look at it, and at first it's like, wow, who wrote this? This is brilliant. And then you start to look at it and say, well, wait a minute. You start to learn how to see it, perceive it, and you realize didn't really say anything, but it did it really well.
Yeah. And it tastes different, but
Yeah.
I think the beauty of AI right now is that before you had to physically be next to someone to work with them, and now they can be anywhere in the world, and it's that communication
It
that
could
it
be, but
opens
at the
up.
same
It's
time,
amazing.
but what if it's not a person? What if it's just like a fancy mirror?
That's okay.
It is okay, but where are we going with this? You can escape to Indonesia, right? So you're good. But
Can't help it with talent. There you go.
but I worry that we get. I mean, I was joking. I had this friend that does computer music, and it's amazing what he does. The computer can actually improvise with him. But we were talking last year about this AI thing. And I said, well, at some point, you can just have this Joel bot, and it'll listen to everything you've ever done, and it'll just keep producing it and producing it. You know, after you die, it'll just keep producing iterations of it. And it horrified him, which I'm glad it did. But but I mean, are there like an infinite a number of Shakespeare plays out there waiting to be written? And what does it starts to be an existential issue. And again, the science fiction thing of the robots not needing us anymore.
Right. I think that that's what really we're here for because as artists, it's about telling that story and each of us having a place to be able to share that story with. And to me, that's what Fishcake is about. It provides a space for artists to, and sometimes you give us the guideline and say, we're doing cats, we're doing this, we're doing that. And it gives us something to latch onto and see the differences between artists, which is great. It's a collaborative space in doing it. And who knows where art's going to go in the future, but lucky us, lucky me that we're here now.
Would anyone like to contribute a question that they've been wondering about?
I have a question for you folks, and that is we're talking about AI and reproduction and so on, and you're talking about how you can feel a difference. But if I was to create through AI, the music or a design, or that would end up on a palette or whatever, are you saying to me that you would be able to make that distinction whether it was done physically by, quote, an artist or not? Would you be able to?
Well, I think a lot of times the images that are created, especially what is that journey type of thing, is it's mostly two-dimensional or projected kind of thing. It's not like a painting. So it's if it was like a two-dimensional creation, in that it would be in the form of a print or something, or something you see on screen. It's like they might be able to do an image of Amos's work or Steve's work, but it wouldn't reproduce like a three-dimensional thing, or even a painting. Like there are a lot of paintings being done in that kind of in the medium, because it's so digital to begin with. But as as far as I know, it hasn't been translated into like those like sofa size, card size, oil paintings, hand painted oil paintings kind of thing. It's and that's the one thing I don't know. Maybe they have painted. Maybe they have created like 3D kind of replicas, but I can't imagine that they could do that with something that looks like paint.
I think they can. Yeah, it's very possible today. I don't think you can tell the difference between a computer generated thing and an original that's hand painted or hand designed and doing it. But I think you, what happens with it is as quick as it's done is as much as is as long as it will last. Art now is disposable. So it's like it's computer generated. So and like social media, like you need to keep posting every day if you can, or 3 times a week minimum to keep a profile going and doing this. But if you don't, then you're forgotten about. That's how art is today. It's like being creative is a disposable thing. It's like people, I going to say this, and it's like I'm tired of people saying that for me, isn't it wonderful that you have passion for what you do? Yes, I do, but it's a profession. I've lived on my arts all of my life. It's very, very different from having a job. I've employed people, I've done all of these things, but it's very different to survive as an artist today. And I think the difference between computer generated art is that it's as quickly disposable as it was made. So when you go to a museum and you see an original piece and you see it and you realize, my God, this guy lost an ear over it. Oh my God, this guy was, the calligraphy died because of the poison in the ink. It's all of these things because when they did calligraphy, a lot of times they would lick the pen.
But in 100 years from now, are they going to consider those quaint?
Well,
Those are quaint ideas because
that's all part of it. It's like it's today. I mean, we can't we can document the past, but how are we going to project the future? I look at kids today because I work with a lot. I enjoy kids, but when I see a 3-year-old, I don't know what that child's going to be in the future. The parents may go, "Oh, a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer," but really, their job has not been created yet. Just as much as the world of art is not, we don't know. I mean, who knows? We just think about it, enter a room, and the walls are with our thoughts. Just, it's that simple. And it's happening. You can walk into a room and your monitors may have your favorite artwork. It's already happening.
But
Light,
I do
light
think
is
that
coloring the walls now. Light is painting the walls. So you can have, so I can go in and it could be a lavender, a pink, a purple. You walk in next and it's suddenly blue. You could walk in and turn black.
Yeah, nice.
But you never know. But it's happening already. It's
Happening so fast.
yeah, it's happening really
Yeah.
quickly. So that's great. But thank you for this time.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel so grateful to be surrounded by smart people. Oh, hi.
I was thinking of Amos. I came here because I got to see this flyer from Amos, and I started my filmmaking career several years ago. And when I was starting that, he knew that I didn't know anybody in the film industry, so he invited all of his friends who are in filmmaking to just help me get connected to those people. And when I started my film making, he actually starred all my musicians that I had, like Iggy and Richard O'Neill on that. And I just felt so thankful and very inspired by those people who are trying to help newcomers. And when I got to be here, when I was listening to these three artists, I just felt how lucky we are in how lucky I am to be stay where there's so many people who are trying to support people like me who are just starting. And so thank you so much for just this talk also to be able to for me to learn a lot about different artists and thank you very much.
What was your name?
what's so good about Fishcake?
Jenny. Oh,
Because
thank you, Jenny.
They do show other artists and all that. And the one thing I was going to also add to the AI thing was that I think in any medium, no matter how artificial or natural, uh, there are going to be classic things made that are worth uh, our attention through the ages and whatever, regardless of like there might be only one thing created out of Journey or one of these AI things, but uh, there is definitely good to be had there. It's just that it's new stuff, and it's a lot of it is not that interesting, but there's a lot of possibility, and I just think that's great. But anyway, that's it.
also as a tool, it might, whatever its impact on art is, it has a lot of other applications, like biomedicine and things like that. So it's going, and it is forcing, it's opening up new dimensions. Ready or not.
Ready or not. Here's our fake leg here. Biodimension.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you guys for coming. I feel
Thank
so
you.
honored to be surrounded by
Yeah, ditto.
artists. As for coming, the exhibition is up till July 7. Yeah, would you like to say that?
Thank you, everyone, for coming out. That's
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
What a surprise.
That's nice of the crowd. You guys did so well.
Freak us out.